Now that years have passed and the hype is officially over and the MCU seems to be crumbling down a little bit, nobody's attached to it anymore, I want to ask the question, is Avengers Endgame actually bad? Today, I want to hear out Cinema Sleuth on YouTube with this video. Avengers Endgame was actually pretty bad because I'm somebody who thinks that there was a little bit of issues with Endgame. I've certainly had my fair share of problems with the movie, but ultimately, it was fantastic. It was the perfect conclusion for the Avengers, and I still to this day get emotional if I ever watch that final scene. I can feel it in my heart. I don't sit here and go Iron Man. Don't get me wrong in saying that, but we're gonna react to this video today. I'd love to know what you guys think about this whole situation down below afterwards. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's watch this video together. Avengers Endgame was actually pretty bad.
Avengers Endgame was pretty bad. Now that might be an unpopular position, but if you cast aside all the hype and emotion tied to the MCU, this movie just has huge problems that I think a lot of people are overlooking simply because...
But this is my problem. This was kind of the point of the movie. It was a giant fan service type conclusion to the end of the movie. That's how I view it, and that's why I don't have personally a real problem with a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, I think they ruined the Hulk, and there's a couple things that I'm sure that he's going to get into, but I like that they went this route with it. I like that that was the focus of the movie.
But while you were getting that sweet, sweet fan service, you probably didn't notice that almost nothing in this movie made sense. Now, I'm a big fan of the MCU, and superhero films in general, but just because I'm a fan doesn't mean I can't point out flaws.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. This is why I wanted to see this video too, because it had a lot of views. Yeah, 404,000 views. I'm going to pause you for a second. I forgot my water. This video is going to be at least a half hour long. I need some water with me. But yeah, this like I said, this video has a ton of views, so I'm interested to hear this out.
And just because this film has moments that you like, doesn't mean that it's good. So get ready to have those rose-tinted glasses shoved right up your ass. So picking up where we left off in the last film, half of all life in the universe has been eliminated by Thanos. And after the Avengers learn he's destroyed the Infinity Stones, they drop him like a sack of potatoes.
I was still surprised by that, and I still did not like that that was a decision that they made in the movie. I thought it kind of ruined the character of Thanos, and it definitely did take away from the final battle, in my opinion, but the music, the hype, everything they did about it kind of made it okay to me.
Right off the bat, I have two huge issues. Firstly, wouldn't destroying the Infinity Stones have horrible ramifications on the universe? The Ancient One specifically says,
"The Infinity Stones create what you experience as the flow of time. Remove one of the stones, and that flow splits."
No.
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit strange when they did that, because Thanos said that the universe required balance. I'm like, what does that mean? So you had to destroy the stones? I don't know. It didn't make any sense. But again, I had no issue that the movie was good.
She says Infinity Stones. So all of these things are super important, and removing just one of them would be catastrophic. But I guess all of them being essentially deleted doesn't have any effect.
It just cancels them out.
On anything? So let me get this straight. This film tells us that these stones are absolutely critical to the universe, but at the same time shows us that the universe continues all the same without them?
I guess they did explain it a little bit by saying the timeline still branches out and everything's there's just going to be a new timeline, one without the stone.
That's confusing. This scene would make more sense if she was just talking about the time stone. That seems like the only one that needs to be returned so it can be used to beat Dormammu. The rest just seem to sit in labs and tombs and create more problems than they
That's actually so true. I never even thought about that.
solve. This is really dumb, and unfortunately it's not explained well at all. Anyway, my second major issue is that killing Thanos so early is a horrible idea, as it deflates all the tension surrounding the antagonist for the rest of the film.
Yeah, even when he came back, I didn't feel the same thing. Thanos was just filled with hate. It's not the same kind of he's not lovable, but you get what I'm about to say, lovable villain, the one that everybody's looking forward to seeing, because it's a different character. It's the same character, of course, but it's he's not the same character at the same time. I thought this was a horrible idea, and I thought this was just kind of done to be oh my god, what are they gonna do in this movie? Oh my god, they killed Thanos off right away, and I don't think it paid off personally.
This nigh unstoppable villain is subdued and killed within seconds while making his goddamn lunch. Wouldn't it have been more compelling if the hero spent most of the film trying to find a clever way to defeat this guy? Seems like they sacrificed the ultimate underdog story for shock value.
Yep, yeah, that's exactly it. Shock value. I believe that's what the case is.
To make matters worse, they end up having a big fight with a younger version of Thanos at the end of the film anyway. So if you're just gonna have that same conflict in the end, why strip away all that character development? The younger Thanos doesn't even truly understand who he's fighting.
Yeah.
Sure, you can say that he relearned some of those memories, but it's just not the same as having the actual experiences.
Yeah, I completely agree with this so far. Now, what I find myself agreeing with him is I'm sure I'm going to agree with the vast majority of like plot holes that this guy's going to point out, but at the end of the day, I still was like ridiculously hyped to watch this movie, and I still would be if I went to go watch it right now.
Overall, he ends up feeling like a different character. Coming off of Infinity War, there were so many opportunities for reprisals and dialogue, and they don't go anywhere. This interaction goes nowhere. This goes nowhere. And these moments go nowhere.
Yep.
It's like if in Return of the Jedi, they killed Vader at the beginning of the film and brought back a younger version of him from the prequels to fight Luke.
Yep, that's exactly it. That's literally exactly
This
it.
doesn't make any sense, and it loses all emotional impact. But enough about inconsistent rules and how they completely ruin their villain. 5 years have passed, and now our heroes need to travel back in time to get the Infinity Stone so they can undo what Thanos did. In case you were wondering, the only reason we jumped ahead 5 years in the story is because that's precisely how long it took this rat to save the day.
I also hated that, man. Like, by the way, I'm speaking about this. I'm sure that somebody's going to comment down below. It's like, did you even like Endgame? Like, yes, I did like Endgame, but I don't like how it was such a coincidence that the universe was saved by a rat. Like, it was funny when the meme came out after Endgame, but come on, man. You couldn't have thought of a better way.
I wish I were joking, but this is actually the key event that sets this whole plot in motion. Anyway, with Scott back in the picture, he suggests to Tony that time travel might be possible via the quantum realm, and thus the time heist takes shape. But when you think about their plan for more than 10 seconds, and how the story gets pushed along by random, unpredictable events, the whole movie feels contrived and unnecessary. The times and places they decide to get most of these Infinity Stones are the most inopportune, making things harder than they need to be.
Yeah, I've heard this argument before. He's going to get into I don't know if it was the Power Stone, the one that's just been in captivity for so long. Like, why go there? When Star-Lord's trying to get it, why not go, like, even just 10 minutes before?
And if they do pick a decent time and place, something ridiculously inconvenient happens because, well, movie.
Well, to be honest with you, I enjoyed the one with Nebula. That connection made sense, and I thought that was pretty interesting to me.
Not being an asshole, though, let's examine the plan for each stone, shall we? So Rocket suggests going back to Morag at the beginning of the first Guardians film to get the Power Stone. Not a completely bad idea, except the script conveniently forces Nebula to spill the beans to a younger Thanos about what the Avengers are doing and the...
No, I saw absolutely no issue with this. I thought it was a brilliant way to have Thanos figure out about what happens to him and learn about the stones and learn about his future. I thought that made sense the way they wrote it. That one I would not pick apart. The others, however, I would say it's worth picking apart a little bit.
History that led to it. Not only is this such a lazy, forced way to get Thanos back into the story, but again, it makes me question why the writers killed him off in the first place. Oh, that's right. Shit, if not for this random issue, this part of the mission would have been like taking candy from a baby.
Well, does anybody else think alongside me here? I don't think that was just a lazy way out. I thought it was pretty cool the way they did that.
While we're here, though, I just want to stress that Nebula doesn't attempt to use her time suit again while being beamed up by Thanos' ship. Seems like it would be worth at least one more try.
Yeah, I mean, she has daddy issues.
And hell, I mean, if she was really devoted to not letting Thanos win, she also could have just killed herself. I know that's a little dark, but Gamora was ready to kill herself to stop Thanos, so why not?
She just kept trying to die.
So because our heroes are fools and we need to pack this movie with tons of fan service, they decide to try for the space, mind, and time stones when they're all in one place.
Yeah, but wait, think about it this way, though. If you're going to go this route and have this big, like time travel type thing for your last, or your big conclusion to an Avengers movie, why would you not go through past movies? Why would you not go through the first Avengers movies? I could understand, rewriting the way they ended up getting the stone, but I actually thought the way they did New York was pretty good, too. Again, fan service-wise, because that's what I want to see. I loved the conversation with Tony and his dad. I loved seeing Hulk smashing things again. I loved the way they did that, especially Captain America vs. Captain America, and even to go, I got eyes on Loki.
New York City in 2012. This might seem like a good idea, at first, except for the fact that it increases the chances of failure by 100%. Not only is the entire world watching because of the Jatari attack, but younger versions of our heroes and villains are everywhere. Wouldn't it have been safer to acquire these stones at neutral times? I mean, most of these things just sit around in labs for decades. I'm sure Tony would be able to find out precisely where and when. The Space Stone could have been retrieved at any time between the 1940s and the first Avengers film, which is what they end up having to do anyway, so it just further proves my point.
Yeah, but again, why wouldn't you go back? Like, that would have taken away from the movie if that wasn't part of the movie, in my opinion, if they didn't go back to 2012.
Mind Stone could have been retrieved between Avengers 1 and Age of Ultron, you know, when it was just sitting on a table. However, when it comes to the Time Stone, it would only make sense to get it from the events of Infinity War, because that's the only time that they knew where it was. They're kind of taking a huge risk thinking they can get it in 2012. None of them even knew about Doctor Strange until Infinity War, and they couldn't possibly be sure he lived at that same address during that time. In 2012, there are still 3 of these Sanctum buildings across the world, and these people are often drifting in between dimensions. I mean,
You just go up there, chill, and wait for them. Yeah, that's more exciting than going back to New York.
Strange had to go to Nepal just to meet the Ancient One. So isn't it extremely lucky that the Time Stone is in New York during this time, and the hard-boiled egg is there to give it up with seemingly little persuasion?
Oh, hard-boiled egg!
Lord, it's a miracle!
I am reality.
In a drunken speech, Thor suggests going back to Asgard in 2013 to get the Reality Stone.
That's another thing I really, really hated about this movie. I hate what they did to Thor, and I will forever hate it. Thor is not that character. I don't care about his redemption story. I don't care what you end up doing with the character afterwards. It was pathetic.
Now, while on the bright side, this squeezed in some character work, it doesn't make a ton of sense logically. Why go to yet another location full of powerful heroes and villains when you could have picked someplace safer? Again, isn't it ridiculously convenient that Thor's mom is just cool with the whole time travel thing?
Yeah, but why wouldn't you want this in the movie, though? That's where I'm sitting here and disagreeing with the whole thing.
If she called Odin or young Thor for help, they'd be fucked. Poor Rocket would have been turned into a coonskin hat. Really, the Reality Stone could have been retrieved from the Collector at any point between Thor 2 and Infinity War. Thor
I don't know. I wouldn't really trust the Collector with anything.
knows that it would be there too because his goddamn friends gave it to the guy.
Why would he go to nowhere?
Because for years, the Reality Stone's been safely stored there with a man called the Collector.
I know I'd be taking my chances with David Bowie over arguably the most powerful race in the universe. Nebula suggests going to Vormir in 2014 to get the Soul Stone. Really, this is the only stone where the location and even the time leave no better option. But unfortunately, that doesn't stop the conveniences in the writing. Of course, the two people that care deeply for one another
But why not? Why not? You wouldn't be able to get it otherwise, would you? You'd have to sacrifice somebody loves.
happen to be the ones picked to go to Vormir so they could make the sacrifice. I mean, if they had sent Nebula and War Machine instead, the mission would be a complete flop. No one except Thanos could possibly have known that it required a sacrifice, so this is just dumb luck. Beyond the plan for each stone, though, it's established that they need Pym particles to time travel, and there's a big deal made about them only having enough Pym particles to pull off the time heist once.
I always thought that was a little bit strange, to be honest with you, because I'm sure Tony could figure out some reason to time travel more. Like, why do you need these Pym particles, and why are there only so little of them?
Pym particles, all right? And ever since Hank Pym got snapped out of existence, this is it. This is what we have. We're not making any more.
Scott, calm down.
Sorry. We've got enough for one round trip each. That's it.
However, later in the film, our heroes need more anyway because, surprise, surprise, their initial plan fails. So you're telling me that no one thought that they should A, figure out how to make more Pym particles, or B, go back and get more before starting the time heist?
Yeah, because if you go back and get more, then you can travel back in time as many times as you want, and then it would make for a little bit of an interesting movie, because maybe you could go to even more parts throughout the entirety of the Avengers. I thought that'd be pretty cool. Like, you'd have make this a trilogy, you could have one fully dedicated movie to just Time Heist.
I mean, we just saw Tony build a time machine in what seemed like a week, and he conveniently guessed what time and place had more Pym particles too. This is just a shitty way of making things seem more dire than they really are. It only gets worse when later the evil Nebula is able to send Thanos' massive ship and army to the present when we were told repeatedly that they had a finite amount of these Pym particles.
Oh my god, I never thought about that. No, one round trip each. Yeah, so no, that makes sense. Because Nebula went in, then Thanos came out. Yeah, one round trip.
How does one little jar of this shit allow you to shrink all of this, but can't transport a few people multiple times?
I don't think about it, man. I just enjoy the movie.
I guess we just have to write the movie for them and say that Thanos backwards engineered more Pym particles. But we all know that wasn't communicated in the film. Also, if it was so easy to backwards engineer these things,
You couldn't have done that earlier?
Basically, the only reason our heroes succeed in their plans is because they get ridiculously lucky at every turn. Conversely, the only reason we have any conflict in this story is because one of our heroes randomly spazzes out and attracts the attention of a younger Thanos from an alternate timeline.
But I think, like, everybody aside from Thor had an okay amount of, like, problems with it. Like, 2012, they had to have a whole new mission back when they were fighting in New York. We had the fan service there. Black Widow had to die. Thor was the only one where it's like, oh my god, watch out for those people turning the corner. That was the one they could have edited a little bit. But even then, I liked the connection that Thor built with his mom through that. I enjoyed all of them.
If they had acted with just a little common sense, and if random issues weren't created for the plot, this movie
Oh my
would be
god, I just realized. Sorry about that,
over
guys.
in 10 minutes. However, because this story is designed from the ground up to have as many crowd-pleasing moments as possible, we have to watch 3 hours of events that, in all honesty, really didn't need to happen at all. So you see, the very structure of Endgame is flawed. And you know what they say, a house built on sand will rake in billions of dollars and no one will give a shit.
This guy's low-key funny. No consequences, okay?
In a universe with so many magical or otherworldly solutions to problems, I can definitely see why it might have been difficult from a writing standpoint to come up with a satisfying ending that felt final.
They did a good job in that, but I think I know where he's gonna go. And this is what people have been talking about since the movie first came out. What if somebody got snapped and they were on a plane? Are they just gonna appear in the air where the plane is no longer?
However, I feel like the writers went out of their way to make the audience not care. Let's start with the time travel. In Endgame, time travel is a little different than what we usually see in these types of movies. Traditionally, the goal of time traveling is to cause or prevent something that will affect the future. However, this movie insists that that's a bunch of baloney.
Changing the past doesn't change the future.
Look, we go back, we get the stones before Thanos gets them. Thanos doesn't have the stones. Problem solved.
Bingo.
That's not how it works.
Instead,
Yeah, and they just said it's not how it works.
the idea is that when you go back in time and change something, you simply create an alternate timeline that has no relation to your own. So for example, if you were to go back in time and kill your younger self, there would now be 2 timelines. The original one where you're still alive, and a new one where you're dead. This makes
Yeah, but what if you're not the original one? The possibilities are endless.
logical sense, I guess, but it kinda just sucks the life right out of time traveling, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, I think it had potential. But with the way that they ended up putting the multiverse out, I didn't really like it all that much.
The writers of Endgame said that they talked to real physicists about the time travel so that it would make as much sense as possible.
What? I didn't know that. Huh? Hey guys, what do you think about time travel? Yeah, physicists, as if time travel's even possible.
While they continually bust the balls of other films like Terminator or Back to the Future for not making sense,
So Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit?
at least the time travel rules in those movies were limited and presented real danger. If Marty didn't get his parents back together, he'd fade out of existence. If Sarah Connor got her fucking head blown off, humanity would lose the war against the machines. Actions had consequences. Sure, if you think about time travel too much, you'll go cross-eyed. But obviously adhering to the most current scientific theories isn't as important as making sure there are stakes in your story.
I don't understand why you would just go to physicists. Like, what did they expect? What did they expect to hear? Like, is this what they came up with? I mean, out of all the theories there, the one that actually makes sense is for something to change about the future. That's my guess, but like, I don't know what you had to waste your time with that for.
At the end of the day, you cared about those characters and what happened to them. I can't say the same about these guys. Ironically, in an attempt to outsmart those other time travel films and make something more based in reality, they seem to forget that when you give your characters too many ways out of a situation, there's no longer any reason to care. For example, with this multiple timeline business, if a character dies, it's now possible to just travel to another timeline and get a version of them back.
That's one of the reasons why I really am not a fan of the multiverse at the time of recording this video. It is October 10th, 2024. I don't know if there are going to be more multiverse movies coming out, but I'm not a fan of the way that it's been done so far.
And when you add a godlike MacGuffin on top of that, it becomes really difficult to give a shit about anything that's happening. To show you what I mean, let's talk about the big character moments in Endgame and why they're all trash.
I am Iron Man.
So the big crescendo of this film and pretty much the whole MCU up until this point is the death of Tony Stark. While I'm sure that this was intended to play as a big emotional moment, to me it played like this.
head. That's crazy, dude. Come on, that's crazy. Like, I get picking apart a movie. I've agreed with a lot of what this guy has said throughout the video, but that's crazy. There's no way you can compare those two. There's no way you can't feel if you were any sort of MCU fan when Iron Man was finally dying. There's no way, dude.
All the characters were crying, and some people in my audience were sniffling in my fucking ear, but I felt nothing. The reason I felt nothing was because this event did not need to happen the way it did.
I know it didn't, but why wouldn't you just, like, enjoy the moment? It's the giant finale of Iron Man. There's, like, this is the problem that I have with some people who look a little bit too deep in movies. And it's not like I have an actual problem with them, don't get me wrong, but I just don't understand you can be in the mindset of enjoying the movie for what it was. Like, watching the events of, like, Infinity War, those awesome battles on Titan that were taking place, and going, I don't think Peter would actually survive a knockout like that. You know, something like that that takes you out of it. Like, I don't understand why people don't just sit back and enjoy the movie that they watch. Like, that was a fantastic scene.
In the end battle, when they're trying to get the gauntlet away from Thanos and Tony ends up sacrificing himself, there's absolutely no reason why they couldn't have done the following. A. Have a strong character like Thor or Captain Marvel snap Thanos and his forces away. B. Have Ant-Man shrink the gauntlet so it can't be used by Thanos. C. Have Captain Marvel fly the gauntlet as far away from the battle as possible at light speed. I mean, she destroys Thanos' ship when she arrives, so they can't follow her. Or D, because she's so powerful, just have Captain Marvel fly right through Thanos' chest. If it absolutely had to be the way the film says it does, though, then the characters could easily have gone to another timeline and gotten the Tony from a few hours earlier once Thanos and his forces were gone.
Honestly, it's true.
Sure, I guess that timeline would be changed, but they don't seem to care about the damage they do to these other timelines, so...
But to be fair, like, if that were happening in real life, I don't think that anybody would actually care either. Like, I personally wouldn't be able to, like, go sacrifice a different, like, friend from another timeline if it ever came down to it. But I would imagine that's what humans would do. No doubt about it.
So why not? And hell, if for some reason they didn't want to use the time machine again, Doctor Strange could have just used the Time Stone to bring Tony back. I mean, from previous films, we know that you can use the Time Stone to reverse time on specific things.
Yeah, that's what I actually didn't like about what they've done with the Infinity Stones. Like, when Black Widow died, when Iron Man died, it's just final. That's it. You can't change it back. Or, like, I think, was it actually, like, that simple that they explained it? Because it was something like this, where it's like, well, why can't we use the Time Stone to bring him back? We can't. When Black Widow died, it was something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, I agree with this. I didn't like that part.
Even dead characters. So why was this the only way this could have played out again?
If I tell you what happens, it won't happen.
Why?
There was no other way.
How many did we win?
And this is what's saving it, right? This is why it works out so well. That, like, that's the plan. It can only happen once.
One.
I used to have nothing. And then I got this.
Using that same logic, why can't they bring back Black Widow with the time machine?
They can't
No, that's what it was. They can't.
be undone. Or
Yeah.
that's at least what the red. They can't
Yeah. They can't.
be undone. Or that's at least what the red floating guy had to say. Maybe you want to go talk to him, okay? Go grab your hammer and you go fly and you talk to him.
Oh. So according to this movie, being the sacrifice for the Soul Stone is the most permanent way a person could die in the MCU.
This I agree with. Come on.
Right.
I'm sure there's something better they could have come up with, dude.
Did anyone else really take this scene seriously when they realized that Gamora was also sacrificed for the Soul Stone and they brought her back from the past just fine? Stop
Oh my
saying
god. I didn't even think about that. That just blew my mind. I never even thought about that.
things won't work when we know they will. People have always complained that these movies had no consequences, but there's an actual in-universe way to reverse death now.
I could do this all day.
It might seem like Cap's ending was fine because, you know, he doesn't die, but just like everything else in the film, it's ruined. Early on, while experimenting with time travel, our heroes also seem to have stumbled upon a way to reverse aging. So again, while everyone was crying into their popcorn, it was plainly obvious that if our heroes really wanted to, They could make Cap young again, or just go get another younger version. You can argue
true.
all day long about how he got on that park bench, but in reality, the resulting scene has no emotional impact either way when you think about the multiple ways he could return.
But I don't want to think about that, and I just don't think about that. I just enjoy the finale of the series of movies that I've been watching for a decade. Does anybody else agree with me in that sense? Like, yeah, there are plot holes, but I don't care. I don't care.
It seems like the goal here was to phase out these three characters and provide as much fan service as humanly possible. But when
Yes. Why wouldn't you? It's the big conclusion.
you take into account everything I've mentioned so far, between the plot, the time travel, and the big character moments being so empty, we're kinda just left with fan service. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely some neat and funny moments in here, but I ask you,
At what cost?
are these moments really enough to float a 3-hour movie and
Yes. 100%.
pay off 10 years of films?
Yes, absolutely. We finally get the fan service, the Avengers assemble, the big giant battle between everybody ever. Yes, that absolutely is worth it.
I'll give you the short answer. When you let all this sink in, you start to see Endgame for the shallow experience it really is. Aside from a moment here or there taken out of context, the most important elements are completely broken. These scenes of sacrifice and passing the torch don't work because we've already established that things like old age and even death don't matter anymore. These tear-jerking moments would have been fine, you know, if they weren't completely contradicted and cheapened by everything else we've been shown. That's
But what I don't get is you're legitimately telling me like you were thinking about this while you were watching Iron Man die. That to be that disconnected is crazy.
just bad writing. The problem is even worse though, because this movie is gonna leave a stain. Multiple stains, in fact, and they'll never wash out.
Ew.
So when all the dusted characters return, the MCU is now 5 years older. But to all those people, it's only been a few seconds. This applies to the entire Marvel Universe. What this means is that essentially every film or TV show going forward is going to be faced with two choices. Make light of this event and always have a giant elephant in the room, or center the entire plot around the consequences of the time skip.
Yeah, and you have a problem if anybody dies now, it doesn't matter because you could always bring him back. Or like I find myself questioning too, like, well, is this going to be permanent? Who knows?
While a movie like Spider-Man Far From Home got away with playing the time skip mostly for comedy, it ended up feeling weird that literally nobody in Peter Parker's life seemed to be affected by this cataclysmic event. On the flip side, are we going to have to watch T'Challa fight another king for the throne in Black Panther 2? Is Doctor Strange going to have to reclaim his title as Sorcerer Supreme? So many of these projects are going to have to spend time explaining the ramifications of Endgame, and it
And look at the great job they've done so far.
just seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's a weird status quo, especially if new characters like the X-Men or Fantastic Four will be introduced.
Yeah, and this is what's coming. At the time of recording this video, we just finished Deadpool and Wolverine, and now the Fantastic Four is on its way.
I want to forget Endgame and the dumb events that happen going forward, but it seems like they'll never go away. And you know damn well that they're going to milk these character endings for a while too. Overall, it's just pretty disappointing to think that the future of this franchise is going to rely so heavily on horrible decisions.
Yeah, well, they did an okay job without the, like, moving on from the actual consequences of this movie, but the problem is the multiverse. And that, you could trace that back to Endgame, but that's kind of not been such a good thing for the MCU.
Speaking of which, I'm also pretty pissed about what they did to Gamora. The Guardians films are probably my favorite out of the whole MCU, and I've grown attached to these characters as a result. You can imagine my disappointment then when I saw that they took Gamora and essentially made her a clean slate. The version
I'm okay with them doing this one time. Just once with Gamora. The last Guardians movie was great in my opinion. Gamora still had her sacrifice. And the dynamic between this new Gamora and Peter right now is good in my opinion. But I do not want to see it done ever again.
they got from 2014 never met the Guardians or had any of the character development we saw in previous films, making it utterly pointless.
But I did like the fact, though, that she kind of switched roles with Nebula now. Nebula's the one who found love for a team, is a different person, and she has to teach Gamora that way when it was the roles were reversed. I liked what they've done. James Gunn's fantastic, man.
I just kept thinking to myself,
Why would you do that?
now poor James Gunn has to explain away this decision or make a large part of Guardians 3 about trying to bring her back up to speed.
See, and they did a fantastic job with what they did.
It also really doesn't even make sense that she survived Tony's snap either. He barely knew who she was or what she looked like, and for all he knew, she was just another soldier in Thanos' army.
I don't think you need to look that deep into it. You could just think like, okay, everybody in Thanos' army. But then I just kind of contradicted myself. She technically was part of Thanos' army back then, right? Yeah, I guess she should have been snapped.
Enough is enough. The more I think about this movie, the worse it gets.
I'm done.
I don't know what else I can really say about Endgame. It was a cultural event, sure, but it just didn't deliver in the same way that Infinity War did.
I will agree with that. Infinity War was infinitely better than Endgame. And when the movie was done, I was like, okay, you know what? Infinity War was better than that. And Infinity War is still to this day my favorite movie of all time. But Endgame had a great conclusion. The whole problem with Endgame is everything leading up to the Avengers Assemble moments.
One area that film really excelled in was getting you invested and making you scared for the characters. Maybe for the first time ever in the MCU. From the opening scene of Infinity War, a massive threat was established. And as the film progressed, things only got more intense.
And I still wish we could have never seen another version of Hulk versus Thanos. Hulk never coming back and becoming Professor Hulk. I personally really hated that.
The heroes worked together, combining their powers in clever ways in order to get the upper hand. And if they made bad decisions, it was usually in line with their character or the result of emotions blinding them. It was tragic because everyone seemed to be trying as hard as they could to stop Thanos, but in the end they all failed. In other words, you really cared about what was happening in Infinity War, because for the limited options that the characters had, they made decent choices. However, in Endgame, the same characters have seemingly boundless choices between time travel and the Infinity Stones, yet they act like complete fools.
Actually, there's one time where they win. There's only one way, and that was the way.
Were there moments in Infinity War that didn't make much sense or weren't explained? Sure, but they were nowhere near as egregious as they are in Endgame. Although the biggest disappointment of all is that people can't seem to tell the difference. This film is almost universally regarded as amazing, but after analyzing it, it's a pretty sloppy fan service movie with not much to get invested in.
I don't think that doesn't make it good, though. No, I will disagree with the not very much to get invested in. Like, we were invested in the whole movie. We were wondering what was going to happen. We were laughing. We were having fun with the time heist. The movie was really, really good, and just because there's fan service in it, I don't think you can really discredit that.
I reviewed that script last night and I was not satisfied.
Yeah, well,
I was not satisfied.
That was a really good video, actually. It was a very, very interesting way to bring up points about Endgame and the major plot holes in it. And again, I'll say it again, guys. It's understandable for people to really pick apart Endgame the way that they did. The writing, the ideas, whatever you wanted to make of it. But at the end of the day, it was the perfect conclusion, in my opinion. I was very, very satisfied. There was only one particular moment in the final battle that kind of pulled me out of it, but then they got me right back in with Iron Man. I don't care how they could have done it differently. I would have changed very little about the movie. I enjoyed the entire thing, but Infinity War was better, I will say that. Miles better than Avengers Endgame. Guys, let me know what you think about everything down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys are interested in a first look at Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, then you should check out this video right here. We take a look at community reactions to the reveal. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Take care.